All right, so I'm with Mike Hogan. Mike, I've been working with Mike since day one. He's been my go-to inspector. So Mike, let's start off by introducing yourself. You're with Global Property Inspections. Let's hear your spiel.
Well, thanks for
your sales pitch. Let's hear it.
Thanks for the vote of confidence. Appreciate you referring us. I've been at this since 2006. That's, I guess, 18 years now. So I was green at the beginning. There's no doubt about it. Was I in this industry? Yes, I was. I was in, contracting. So it wasn't new to me. But let me tell you, there's a lot of things to review on a house.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like being a GP, general practitioner. You got to be well-rounded about all of the aspects of construction, and then you refer proper contractors for each defect.
Mike, let's just go over a quick rundown of some things you look for when you're doing a home inspection. Let's say with a first-time home buyer.
So first-time buyers, it's very important to make sure they're well-educated on what they're buying, because they haven't owned a home before.
Yep.
So they don't understand a breaker panel. They don't understand, or they do understand, they think they understand, but we just clarify whether they do or not.
Sure.
Heating systems. Make sure that whatever we do find during that day, that they've got a budget to repair it all.
Sure. Yeah. So what would you classify as the major things to look for? Like when you're going through a home, what are some, I won't say red flags, but what are some things you really want to focus your attention to?
Well, the costly fixes, but we like to cover everything.
Yep.
So the first thing is we take a look from the street. Does the house look square? Does it look level? Is there any red flags there?
Yep.
Is there missing siding? How long has it been missing? Does it look like it's been missing for 10 years?
Yep.
Then you could probably figure out that the rest of the house has been neglected as well.
Okay.
So it's, foundation outside is very, very important.
So you just said foundation. So what would be a good crack and what would be a bad crack in a foundation?
Probably 5% of homes don't have some form of a crack in them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get too excited if an inspector says there's a crack. Let's see what it is. It's a little hairline crack. If it's a crack in the top 2 feet, does it go down below the grade that you can see?
Yeah.
Then that starts to get a little more complex.
Yeah.
Is there an opening in the crack that you can actually put like a dime in there? Well, that starts to get a little more serious where you want to do some epoxy injection.
Yeah.
For sure. And most importantly, deflection.
Yeah.
If you have deflection on one side of the house, you're going to find it likely on another side around the corner. Concrete is no longer aligned.
Okay.
So there's a crack where let's say where my fingers are.
Yep.
But it's like this.
Okay. So it's actually shifted.
Typically when you find that, you'll find another one around the corner or on the same run, because that's a serious shift.
I always say when looking at foundations, it's not a matter of if they're going to crack, it's a matter of when, right?
Yeah.
Continuing with outside, the deck. What would you be looking at? What would be some concerns, red flags when inspecting a deck?
Well, undersized lumber for one. So 4x4 posts versus 6x6 posts. If it was built 25 years ago and it has 4x4 posts, well, that was acceptable back then, but then we'll recommend upgrading to 6x6. Stair systems that are on the ground. So if they're on the ground, they're typically rotting at the base.
Yeah.
They should be on either patio stones or a good granular base, at least, for proper drainage. Joist hangers missing, lag bolts missing, lag bolts without washers, decks installed right over vinyl siding. It shouldn't be. The vinyl siding has to be interrupted with a flashing and so on.
Let's talk about the roof. So what would be an indication of a bad roof, or maybe determining the age of a roof?
Well, again, looking at it, there's several ways to inspect it. I do use drones. Some of them I get on with a ladder. It just depends on how safe it is. Roof curling. So the corners of the shingles may curl up. Typically that'll tell us that the ventilation in the attic is not adequate.
Yep.
But that can be a problem because now they're more susceptible to wind pickup, right?
Okay.
Getting torn off. Granular loss. So that'll tell you the age of a roof pretty quick. Typically a roof, 30-year shingle, I'm going to say you're going to replace by probably year 26-ish. And it all depends on the environment it's in, right?
Yeah.
If it's susceptible to a lot of wind, and that also takes a lot of granular off of roofs. So you look in the gutters and there's tons of granular in the gutters. So it's those are little indicators of age of roof. Typically we'll get them right within 5 to 6 years.
Right on. Obviously, you're going to be inspecting the attic. So what would be some indications or things you should look for in an attic?
Well, proper ventilation is very, very important.
Yep.
If you don't have proper ventilation, you're going to have moisture buildup, because every house loses heat, and the heat loss that comes up through into the attic, through the ceiling, through the insulation, and all will cause moisture in an attic that's not well vented. And then the sheathing will get discoloration, and then eventually possibly mold. You're going to look for water stains, past leaks that are active.
Yeah. You just mentioned insulation. So you hear the word, depending on the age of the home, of course, asbestos. So when should we be concerned with asbestos? Is it something we should remediate? What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, typically, if you're going to find asbestos in a house, it's because it's already been tested. It was found to be vermiculite first, is what we find. And vermiculite, we recommend having tests for asbestos.
Is it something you should be concerned about right away? Should you be looking at remediating it?
Vermiculite has asbestos, it's gone to the lab, it's done. So it's above the gyprock and below the insulation. So if somebody's not going to renovate and it's in a well-vented attic,
Right.
I would say it's not to be worried, but got to remember, somebody else is going to buy that house from you down the road, right?
Yeah.
And they may hear, oh, asbestos? No, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So
I actually ran into that not too long ago.
Yeah.
That there was asbestos in there. My client said, well, if it's not being messed with, we don't plan on doing any renovations. I'm like, well, maybe later on down the road, 5-10 years from now, and you're coming to me wanting to sell the home, well, your home does have asbestos, more than likely it's going to come up in an inspection, right?
Definitely. And people get lost in the emotions and the excitement of buying a house and say, oh, you know, I can live with that. I can live with that. They've been looking for a house. Well, that, you know that.
Yeah.
How many houses do they look at to find this one?
Yeah.
And the competition and so on, right? So, it's a dangerous avenue.
Yeah. When did they stop using asbestos?
Oh, geez. You know, the stuff lingered around for years after they stopped delivering it, right?
Yeah.
There was piles of it in warehouses, so
they kept using it afterwards.
Yeah, they kept using it afterwards. So you really got to be careful. You really got to look for that. But I'm going to say, if you're in a 40-year-old house, you should not be finding asbestos.
Right.
Even a 50-year-old house, you probably shouldn't be finding asbestos.
All right, so you're doing a walk through the home. What would be some red flags inside? What are some key things that you'd be looking for in just doing a standard walkthrough?
Well, we're looking at all the walls, so we're looking for cracks in all the walls, water stains, typically below windows, but again, you can find them just about anywhere. Floors that are out of level. You know, I start my inspections down in the basement. So I'll find flags in the basement that I'll find results of flags on the upper floors. So
one will lead into another.
Exactly.
What's an HVAC machine and what's it used for?
Well, HVAC has to do with any ventilation and heating of a home. So if we're talking about an airtight home built today, it would have an air exchanger. Air exchanger will take the air from outside and exchange it with the inside air. Very, very important that you have that. And now even older homes that are being renovated with new windows and so on, we always recommend that they consider putting in an air exchanger.
Right.
HVAC could touch base with, if you get somebody in that does a brand new build, the HVAC guy is going to do your air exchanger, all your ventilation, rough ends for the house, bathrooms, kitchen, so on.
Yeah. We always hear this word, the scary word called Kitec.
Oh no.
We're talking heating systems. Talk about Kitec.
Okay. Well, Kitec, I guess now we're in 2024, so it's been out for, I guess 2003-ish, in that time frame, and no longer being used because there was problems with the Kitec pipe. In most cases, most of the problems were caused by over temperatures. So they're used on boilers. Kitec's not used for domestic water, but it's more or less used for heating. So it does. If Kitec doesn't have the oxy barrier in it, it's problematic. And it's more problematic when boilers are cranked up to 200 degrees when the stuff's really rated for 180. And mostly it's the fittings that were the problem. So I've been in a lot of Kitec homes. Well, they're not Kitec homes, they're homes with Kitec, and couldn't find a problem with it. And I've been in others where you'll see that there's been these repairs. So those are flags
Yeah.
that, likely going to have more problems down the road. It's the same thing with PEX pipes. It's fittings. You see brass fittings on some well systems that are just chewed to death, 12 years old. That they can't handle the minerals in the water and they start to corrode. And everybody blames it on the pipe. Most of the times it's the fittings.
Yeah. So now you're in the utility room and you're looking at the electrical system, electrical panel. What would be some red flags? What are your main touching points when looking at that?
First red flag is when you open up the area where the panel is.
And sparks fly.
Yeah, exactly. Or I get electrocuted. Then the inspection's over.
Problem. Yeah, we're done.
Yeah. So, like the cover of the panel.
Yeah.
It's got 6 holes. In the most case, they have 6 fastening holes. You get 4 screws missing. Okay, somebody's been in the panel.
Yeah.
My first red flag is not liking an electrician or one that's on vacation. Didn't put the screws back. So typically when that is present, there's always something else in the panel.
Yeah.
And it could be just a double tap. It could be, a double tap because they've added a circuit, but they didn't have a breaker position or they didn't have a breaker with them. Those are red flags. Aluminum, a lot of people get wound up about aluminum. Aluminum is fine as long as it's properly installed. Dielectric grease on the connections. If not, then it's problematic. And then again, the outlets have to be jumpered with, pigtailed with the copper pigtails. So
I open up the panel and I see fuses. Should I panic?
Well, if it's a 60 amp, I don't know about panic, but just budget to replace it.
Sure.
Okay, because it has to be replaced.
Yeah. So in terms of replacing, what would be a cost?
I typically say $3,500 to $5,000 is a safe mark, and then I throw the little joke in about within 300%.
Yeah. Let's talk about windows.
Okay.
So a home is listed as a 4-bedroom.
Right.
And we go downstairs, and that 4th bedroom is down there. So what is important to consider when determining what a bedroom is?
Well, first off, it has to have the proper egress. So there's minimum sizes, a minimum opening of 15 inches. If it's 15 inches, it needs to be 36 in the other direction.
Right.
So, and that gives you your 547 square inches of egress. A lot of times an opening where it's a double hung system, you can just change it to a casement and that'll meet the egress. So, you're just budget around $1,000 and change out that window and don't walk away from a home you like.
So we talked about egress in a window. So when looking at a window, what are some things you want to identify?
So I'm going to be looking from the outside at first walk around. Depending on the time of year, I'll be looking for fogging. If I don't see fogging, I'm obviously still looking to see signs of past fogging, staining inside the window pane. The age of the windows. If I can see the age of the windows, typically a window's got a life expectancy of 30 years, 25, 30 years. The south side, for instance, southwest side are more apt to have fogging on a cooler morning because the seals inside are cracking because they're UV abused. Really, the sun is...
Yep.
UV rays start cracking that seal in between the window panes. So we're looking for that kind of thing.
Let's touch upon heating systems. So heat pumps, what can you tell us about?
Yeah, heat pumps are very popular nowadays. Ductless heat pumps are very popular. A lot of places have baseboard heating. People install ductless heat pumps. They just have to understand that they are conditioning the air in the location they're in.
Right.
It's not central. You can get them on a ducted system where your heat pump is outside like a ductless, but it's ducted. It's conditioning the air within the ducted system that blows out everywhere. So, and they are popular, and they're getting to be a lot more economical for cost of operations. Yeah.
We're getting into the winter time right now, and things get pretty cold. So, at what point would a ductless heat pump become, I don't want to say ineffective, but when would you have to say, you know what, it's getting a little cold in here, I think we should turn on the baseboard heat?
Yeah, well, it used to be when they first came out, minus 14 was kind of like the baseline. Now I'm hearing there's some that are minus 22. Fortunately, in Atlantic, Canada, we don't really see that cold of a day, but I'm going to say anywhere between minus 15 and minus 18, you might expect that you should have your baseboards come on. And you can set them to a minimum. And, if the ductless heat pump isn't providing heat, at least you're waking up with your toes no frost.
Yeah. So I'm looking at a house 80 years, 100 years old. What are some concerns or things that I should be looking at in terms of plumbing, let's say?
Well, first off, the water line feed, if it's not on a well, if it's lead fed. So lead lines are no longer, they're just not friendly, right?
Yeah.
So you want to look for that. Cast iron. Cast irons typically was designed for a 100-year life cycle. It's more like a 50 to 75 year, and then you start seeing cracking, leaking, mostly on the horizontal runs. The verticals last a lot longer because they just drain and they're drying out from the air that's in the stack vent, let's just say. So, but it's the cast iron that's costly.
So what are some concerns typically that a first-time home buyer will overlook when purchasing a home? I guess this may be more of a question for me, but on your side of things.
Shane? I think with the excitement of getting their first home, they'll tend to overlook stuff like we talked about in the past, vermiculite. Well, we're not going to do any renovations. We'll let that slide.
Yeah.
They're anxious to get in this home. They're excited. There's a lot of little things that they'll overlook. The fact that the boiler is going to expire in 5 years. I don't mean expire in a way of explode. Just its life expectancy is another 5 years, and it could go on for another 10 after if it's well maintained. But little things like that they'll overlook. They'll say, "Oh yeah, 5 years, we could deal with that," and just not putting a good budget together.
Just looking at all the bells and whistles opposed to the finer details and things that really, really matter when going through a home.
Yeah, exactly. The expensive things, right? Yeah. Heating system, roof systems.
Yeah. And a lot of first-time home buyers don't think about that and budget. They're purchasing a home and then look at not doing the upgrading and maintenance and thinking that, okay, this roof is at its life expectancy. I'm going to have to dish out, $10,000 or whatever it might be, or even electrical panel, like you said. So those are some things they should definitely be concerned about and think about.
And I think, I hear realtors guiding them in the right direction about, working it through with their mortgage if it fits their budget, and that's not my profession. I don't get involved in that part.
Yeah,
I stay out of that.
Yeah, and I stay out of your part too.
You got it.
Yeah. So winding things down, what are some things that the buyer should focus on when reviewing your report?
Well, I'd say start calculating what the costs of changes required are based on the results of the inspection, and basically it's if you're buying a $1 million house and you have $14,000 worth of repairs, it's not really a large number.
No.
It's not a very large percentage. And I'll tell you, there's not a house that we will go into and won't find a problem.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of balancing and making a judgment call on whether the expense of bringing the house to the level you want it to be is worth it or not. That's where I would guide them at most, and make sure that they have the budget for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing more disappointed than going through all of this and then 2 years down the road you find yourself listing again.
Yeah.
And you got to move on.
All right, so in selecting a home inspector, most of the time the agent will refer somebody, and you've been my number one guy since I can remember, since I've been in business. But what are some things that a buyer should be considering when selecting?
Well, you definitely want to do your research and select an inspector that's part of an association that's recognizable, like CAPI, for instance, Canadian Home and Property Inspectors. That they're insured. Well, if you're part of that CAPI membership, you have to have insurance. You have to send them proof of insurance annually. So that's a good start. Being part of an association, make sure that inspectors are doing their due diligence annually in learning, going to seminars and all of that stuff, right? Choose an inspector. I feel bad for the young guys or young people that are trying to get into this business, that don't have the experience. All I can say is try to go with somebody who has a lot of experience. Make sure you check their referrals if they haven't been referred to you by somebody.
Yeah.
I don't advertise, Shane.
Yeah.
No.
Word of mouth.
It's all, now I've been at this 20 years, it's word of mouth.
Referral.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks very much for spending the time with us today. A wealth of information to take in, a lot of great tips. And yeah, I'll be seeing you probably in the next handful of days. I got a good inspection for you.
I'm looking forward to that. It's always nice dealing with professionals.
Awesome. Thanks,
And
Mike.
you guys do it well with the bike group.
Yes, we do.
I gotta say.
See you on the next one.
See you on the next one.
Let's do the outro.
The outro?
Yeah.
Outro.
I'm just saying goodbye.
Oh, see you, Shane. See you